Alright, continuing my conversation with the Modern Mystic about the brain. And yeah, we've added a new cast of characters, the five senses, and the thinkers and the feelers, the emoters, let's call them, not necessarily feelings. So yeah, it gets a little complicated though. The more characters we add, the more blah blah blah, it gets a little bit tricky. I would almost argue that the senses aren't really dwarfs. They're just like, they're because there's something all the emotions and all the thoughts are connected to. I mean, any one of the thinking personalities can be dominant in terms of my focus. He can be controlling the camera, so to speak. And the others can still see, but they're like further away from the screen. So if you stayed with the couch analogy, just for the sake of argument, there was a screen. And, there's a few dwarfs that are really close, and they're controlling. And there's ones that are further away, and they're only interested when the subject matter interests them. Then they'll take focus. They'll take some control. They'll push their way through the pile of dwarfs and play with the focus. The same with the other senses. They're all reacting. So I'm not too comfortable with the idea of making the senses reacting dwarfs, because they really don't react. They're just raw in. They're just stuff coming in, and these guys react to all of this stuff going on, which really does make this gets a little complicated. But I was thinking of almost changing the scenario just to add the idea of that these dwarfs are puppets, and that they have no master. So their strings are going to a network in the ceiling, let's say, and their strings are attached to the other guy's strings. And so what one guy does affects the other guy, and 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 like a chain reaction. And like that might be a better way of metaphoring the puppets. Understanding that there's nothing controlling what's going on, that there's just these mechanisms of programs, these puppets. They all have a speciality. They all react a certain way to the environmental conditions. What's on the view screen, what's coming in the speakers, what the taster's sensing, what the smellio and the others. The feelio gets a little tricky just because we have sensations that are internal, like a pain, and then we have, there's nausea or headaches, or these weird nuancy kind of feelings, sensations that are hard to describe, lightheadedness, just strange queer feelings that don't fit into just something like touch. But anyway, so yeah, the sense stuff is coming in through the walls, and it's controlled based on who can get to it, who's got access to it, or who's closest to it at the time. Like what my mood is today will be decided by what characters, what emoticons are closest to the hardware, and what thinkicons are closest to the visual and audio inputs. And every day those characters sort of change. The pattern of how the stuff comes in that's not on strings, this analog information, and it's converted to this digital information through the strings. So the thinkicon thinks, and when he does this motion, aha, an emoticon, does a reciprocal motion, and if there's another emoticon next to him, he'll poke him in the eye, and then that emoticon will cover his eye, and that'll cause the other thinkicon to say, oh, what's that about? Or hit his own head, and then when he hits his own head, it knocks his head into the other thinkicon guy. So, I mean, it's this whole Keystone Cop kind of nonsense that goes on, and it's all dictated by how these strings connect them, where they are at any one time. And this metaphor would need the adaptation of change, like how do you create a new string, or something. But I mean, all of this is going. I like these metaphors. I think we've done something constructive with them. I just don't know if we can take them further without almost building the model. Almost starting to draw the picture, of the house and the dwarfs and the strings and the. But I think the strings start to get us closer. The idea of the puppets and the strings get us closer to the actual way the brain works, where there is these neural connections between these things. This wiring. And so I think that's probably helpful to understand that that everything's reactionary, that nothing happens inside this room, this theater, that doesn't have a cascade of reactions. And those reactions are, in a sense, their momentum is hard to stop. Like I said, I've sort of said in videos in the past that you could have an eddy spinning in your head that's 30 years old. That the thing caught up in the eddy, the little piece of stick, has been spinning around in circles for 30 years. And now something will happen today that'll disrupt that flow of water just enough to free that stick so it flies down the stream into consciousness. Even though it's 30 years old, it's finally now going to be realized as a happening. It was just caught up in a spiral. And that there's all kinds of that. All this energy that's happening in this room is almost frictionless. So, I mean, any action or reaction just seems to just keep going. It just keeps, one guy hits, this guy hits, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and all they do is keep modifying the hitting, because some new input comes in from the environment, and that gives it another nudge in a different direction. And then the sound gives a nudge in another direction. But the movement is constant. The changes, the reactionary environment just keeps doing this. And so then what we have to do is come up with some mechanism that compiles that movement into something that changes the strings, that changes the structure, the position, to give it more cohesion, where ideas become, where they are filtered, where the puppet is almost constructed into, its identity becomes firmer and firmer with time, and becomes more confident, or more stable, more capable, more automatic, like learning how to throw the baseball. You throw enough baseballs and it becomes automatic. You don't think about it. You don't, the muscle memory is just built into you. And we have this muscle memory of our intelligence, that our intelligence does the same thing. It becomes more and more professional at thinking. It becomes more and more professional, more and more competent at idea construction, at sentence construction, at conception construction, and being able to glue it all together and make it more cohesive, and come up with dwarf puppet metaphors. Yeah, that's what you get, for 50 years' work. Yeah, so I mean, it's, I just don't know how exactly to take it to some next step. But I think the step of understanding this idea that it's all made from nothing. It all just starts with these little baby puppets, and that somehow through time they're matured into having real personality, a real character, a real individual character, and that somehow this all takes place in this little room, where they just affect each other as they're affected by the environment. Yeah. I think that's probably enough. I don't know if there's anything else I need to say. Yeah, no, I think that's, there's no, like I said, I'm just sort of stuck in the sense that, we have to start getting more detailed, because we're not going to remember the story. You know, you can't just keep doing this off the top of your head, because there's too many. Now there's almost too many elements. I mean, we got lava, we got puppets, we got dwarfs, we got strings, we got sense inputs, we got functional outputs. You know, we're getting complicated. But I guess what I'm saying is that I'd still classify these things as environmental, and emotions and thinkers as these are the programming stuff. That's still how that's still a distinction I would make. Some are hardware elements, and some are the things being evolved through the interaction. That's okay, I think. So, yeah, just mush along and such. Yeah, so I think, I mean, you know, something will occur to me, and I'll say, that's a good thing to add, and then I'll add it, but, yeah, I have to think about it.